Welcome all you multifamily maniacs. I'm Dr. Heath Jones.
And I'm Hutch, the Marine Investor.
Afternoon, Marine. How are you doing?
What up, Doc? I'm doing great.
As we've been moving through our series of acquiring multifamily properties and what you need to do, one important part of that is what do you do after you acquire those properties? And so the question that we'll be asking today is, how do you manage all those multifamily assets? So we're going to be focusing on asset management. Our guest today has been a real estate investor since 2014. He started by flipping houses and owned single-family rentals until May of 2018 when he formed 88 Real Estate Capital and closed on his first apartment syndication, raising over $600,000 for the deal. That was a whole order of magnitude off.
Couple zeros.
He was laid off from his corporate job as a project manager, and so he jumped full-time into real estate. He found some excellent partners and is an active member in 5 apartment complexes holding over 675 units. In 2020, he launched True Multifamily, which is a podcast illuminating the real-life stories, struggles, and successes of multifamily property owners. So you should definitely check out True Multifamily podcast. You can connect with him on his Instagram at True Multifamily or visit truemultifamily.show. We'd like to welcome to our show Mr. Justin Fraser. How are you doing, sir?
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me. Thanks for that excellent introduction. And I definitely appreciate you having me on the show.
Under introduction, as I would tell my Marines, you did that.
This is true. This is true.
A lot of times we're way too humble to really accept that the greatness that we have achieved in our life, we did that. So
you're absolutely right. I love it.
You did that. So
I love it.
Appreciate you joining us on our show.
Yeah, this is great. Thanks for having me. I'm so excited about your topic of the day. That is what I do for income and as a partnership in my real estate businesses. And that's what the podcast is all about as well, is what happens after we close on multifamily property. Because so often people talk about finding deals, raising money, getting to closing. How do I structure this legally? And then they pop the champagne when they close and it's all successful. And so I feel like maybe hold on that bottle of champagne and let's make sure we can pay our investors and operate our property smoothly and according to the business plan that we set up during underwriting.
No, you're exactly right. It's like you pop the champagne, but then the next day you're like, oh crap, we got to get to work.
Now it's when the job starts.
That's right.
All of that was just the setup, just to get there. All that stress and hard work. And listen, I've been through it, and it feels like a marathon, and you finally close, and you're like, all that stress relief. And then you realize, oh, I have now bought myself a job and responsibility. And if I've raised money, I've got other people's retirements on the line here, and the pressure is so enormous that we have to make sure that we're running our properties effectively.
That's right. So a lot of people make it sound simple, which is simple, but it's just not easy. Now, when those hard time comes, Justin.
So what is your favorite real estate quote?
So the quote that always resonates with me, whether I'm in a tough situation or think times are good or times are bad, is how you do anything is how you do everything. And I don't know where, I can't actually attribute that. I'm sure I can Google it for you guys. But really, for me, what that means is that any interaction, whether it's how I respond to someone cutting me off on the road, or how I communicate to my investors in my investor communication, or how I answer the phone, that's me. I don't have a different persona. I don't have a different, show face or whatever. Like it's just, I am me. And so that actually resonates with my investors and partners because they know what they're getting and they understand. And that's something that I've just resonated with me for years. And so if I'm ever faced with a situation where it's like, I'm not so comfortable sharing this information, or maybe I want to gloss over some of the bad news on our property in my investor update, I think about that and I think, oh no, actually I need to do the right thing here and share all the information, because otherwise, I don't want to be a person that hides information or glosses over things, and I'm just very real and upfront. And so that's a nice guiding light quote for me.
That's great, especially the part of not sugarcoating or not withholding information. You know what I mean? Because one of the things that we do in the Marine Corps, especially in aviation, right? We talk about what do I know, who needs to know, and who have I told, right? So passing information and not being a senior man with a secret either, right? So it's the same thing in what you do as an asset manager. We talk about popping champagne and talking about feeling accomplished after closing on a property, but we all understand that in order to have a successful asset, right, a lot of stuff goes into underwriting. So as the asset manager, what are some of those strategy that you utilize to ensure that you're making the right decision during acquisition to assist with better asset management?
Yeah, you're right. Asset management absolutely begins before you even close on the property, and that's in the business plan creation phase. And so the way that our team is set up now is we have someone that focuses on underwriting. Someone finds a deal, someone underwrites a deal, but I start in that underwriting phase and collaborating on the business plan, because an underwriter might put a sample projected rents together that maybe is not realistic. Maybe we can't go turn over 100% of our tenant base in year one, and most of the time you shouldn't do that anyway. So don't underwrite that way if you are. And so I start to bring the realistic side, the implementation side forward, and we talk about that and we build out our plans accordingly. Because what I would hate is to receive a business plan that is absolutely unachievable, right? Because then from day one, it's like, oh man, there's nothing I can do here. I'm already behind the ball. So we start by looking at, are time frames realistic? Are we putting enough money into the CapEx plan? Are we going to spend enough? If you're underwriting that we're going to get $100 rent bump, well, I'm going to go out and find what the other units that are getting in that market are getting. What do they look like? What amenities are at that property? What is the management situation over there? And are we, in our property that we're going to buy, going to be able to replicate that and match what's going on down the road? Because it's one thing to look online and see average rents are $800. It's another thing to say, well, those units are 300 more square feet, or have the extra half bath, or they have a fitness center or a pool. And so there's all these other factors that you can't always just look at, 1 bedroom, 1 bath, or 2 bedroom, 1 bath and say, well, we should be there because that's what the other units are. There's this whole other component that a tenant will evaluate when they're looking at a property. The other thing is reputation. We can turn a reputation of a property, but we cannot do it overnight, and we usually can't do it within a year. And so if you've got really poor reviews online where people are talking about pests or management that doesn't take care of maintenance issues, that's a good opportunity. Number one, that's great. Like, we all want deals that are kind of a mess in the beginning, but we have to be realistic. I can't go in and renovate a premier unit and put stainless and granite and all these great things into one unit that's surrounded by a bunch of people that are used to poor maintenance, that are used to lower rents. No one's going to want to move into that unit, because the community is another whole aspect of it that we don't think about. And so the community has to evolve and change over time as well. So that's all to say that I look for more of a gradual change. And our most successful property that we have, we're only renovating, it's 222 units, and we're only doing 4 units a month. We're renovating as units become vacant. We're gradually bringing the quality up. But the best part is we underwrote that way. So we didn't underwrite to come in with 100 units a year and be done in 2 years. It's a 3+ year renovation plan that's going to take a long time, but we're gradually making incremental changes. And as we make unit changes, we can add amenities, which brings in more families, more the different types of tenants that we're looking for. We just placed playgrounds at some of our properties, and so that brings in a different type of tenant that we want. But I can't just go in overnight, because that tenant also doesn't want to feel like they are unsafe, or that there's crime at the property. So everything sort of has to change. It's like turning around a cruise ship, right? It's going to take a while, but you'll get there, right? But it's going to be a slow process.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, I think what's great about what you're saying is that if there's people out there listening who are underwriting a deal or looking at analyzing the deal, the most important thing you should do is think about what it's going to take to manage that asset while you're putting your numbers together, and be more realistic about what you expect to do once you have that property. And are the things you're projecting to do realistic? And so asset management, as Hutch was saying, starts way before you even own the property. It's taking what you think you can do at the beginning and then moving forward with your underwriting with that in mind.
Yeah, so I can give you another example right off the bat here is construction spend. And so if, as you're underwriting, you're figuring out how much am I going to raise, how much reserves am I going to close this property with? Maybe you're getting a bridge loan to do a heavy construction project. We do a lot of that. So let's say you are raising and you've got $200,000 in reserves. Excellent. What that means is when you start to do that construction work, likely you're going to have to front the money. You're going to do the work. So you're going to pay your deposit. The contractor's going to do the work. Then you're going to pay the final payment. So maybe a month has gone by. You're authorizing all this work, all these projects. Meanwhile, your bank account is dwindling, right? And then you got to package it all up and submit a draw to your lender. And then they need to come and do an inspection, and then they're going to hold on to your money. It's usually a month-ish for a draw to come in, right? So you could be 2 to 3 months from the time you first spent that dollar until you get it reimbursed. And so all your reserves now you're kind of limited to how much you can actually spend per month. So you can't go in and renovate even if everything was vacant, you can't spend all that money at once. And so you have to be able to factor in, okay, I know money's going to come out. I know it's going to come back 2 to 3 months later, and plan for that cash cycle. So that you're factoring that into your construction plans as well.
Oh, that sounds great. All before closing, right? So after you closing, right?
Yeah.
That's when the fun really, really starts, right?
Yeah.
So as far as managing that business plan or that aspect of the business plan, allocating funds, is that a job that an asset manager does, or do you have an accountant that take care of that?
Accountant labels things and does the accountant does the paperwork side of it. The asset manager does the strategy and the thinking side of it. So, we have bookkeepers and accountants and all that, but really I'm responsible for the cash management for all of our assets. And so I need to make sure that we don't run out of money, which sounds simple, but especially when we're doing construction can be sort of complicated. And so, if we're issuing funds to start a project, it's not always unit turns. Like we're doing a staircase project now where we had to put up $30,000 in the beginning, and it's a 6-month project. And so I'm not able to get that money back from the bank for probably 8 months after I put it out. And so I know, all right, that money is not available for me to take. And I had to plan that ahead of time, but I also now have to manage and get my other draws done quickly so I can get those funds back. And that's all aside from, the actual operations cash, which is money coming in from rents. And then we take out, of course, operational expenses. A lot of that, we use third-party management in every market that we're in. And so the nice thing about having properties that are in the 100+ size range is that we have full-time staff. So we have leasing staff, we have maintenance staff. And so with that generally comes full-time, accountants and properly done books and all of that come from the property management company. So I don't have to worry about that as much, but I also do have to worry about directing them and directing the funds and making sure, because at the end of the day, like I said, I'm responsible for the business plan, I'm responsible for the cash, and making sure that we are reviewing KPIs and data so that we don't run out of money and that we're making enough to sustain the property moving forward.
There's a lot of things that people need to consider that they may not be considering prior to closing in terms of renovations, the construction, the cash flow cycle, as you put it. That's one bucket of problems or issues that you're having to continually deal with, let alone managing the manager to make sure that all the properties are fully occupied, that they're paying you what they say, that all the repairs or maintenance issues that they're doing it appropriately, not overcharging. There's a whole host of things that you have to do. So, but before we get to that point, so say your company has just now signed all the paperwork, you just closed the deal at say noon on a particular day. What is the first thing you as the asset manager does? What do you do right after the closing?
I love day one. Day one is so much fun because that's when you find out everything you missed during due diligence.
So is there some strategy you have for when you schedule your closing?
Closings get pushed all the time for 1,000 reasons, and so we can't, usually closings happen for us remotely. I'll be here at my desk and get the notification, okay, we're finally fully closed. But the next day or the day after, I'm going to be at the property. And so there's all of our properties are a flight or drive away. And I sort of just block like 2 weeks of my calendar, like, okay, somewhere in the year, I'm going to have to leave immediately and be gone for 2 days. The plan then, day one, we had a great closing when we closed in last June. We bought a 222 unit and we had 6 different team members come out, all people that are part of the general partnership, and then we had our property management company there. And because 222 units is a lot, but day one priority is walk all the units. What we did was we each had a nice clipboard. There were certain things that we're looking for in each unit, like are there leaks, are there pests, tenant complaints, anything clearly broken, confirm number of bedrooms and bathrooms, because if we didn't get into all of them on that property, we did, but sometimes you don't even get into all the properties during the units during due diligence. Things like confirming what we thought is actually there physically, and making sure there's no surprises from the time we did our inspection to now. Like, is there mold growth? Are there leaks? Did a tree fall down and collapse this roof in the back that we didn't see? Whatever it might be, we want to get a full physical condition assessment, and we want to talk to as many tenants as we can and just get a sense from them, because tenants will tell you anything and everything. And so, hey, introduce yourselves. We're the new management group. We're here to make your life better. We're going to start taking care. Tell me about the property. Tell me, what concerns you have. Tell me what's broken. You get so much good information out of that in day one. And so everyone will divide up. So I think last time we had 6 teams. It wasn't like, it was about 40 units a team.
I was going to say, like quick math, that's like 37 units a person or team.
Still a lot, but teams of like 2 at least. So it takes 12 people to do this, and it takes pretty much a day, but 2 people can go in. One person's responsible for checking out the kitchen and the living room. The other's responsible for the bedrooms and the bath. And then you're both talking to the tenant, or, you divide it up however you need to divide it up, mark down very clearly. And honestly, there's a lot of good tech solutions you can use, set up like Google Forms. But at the end of the day, sometimes it's quicker and easier just to paper on a notepad and have pre-labeled, a questionnaire and each unit on there. And then you just go page by page by page and keep it all, and then condense it all at the end. So we do our full day blitz. We get back together, at the end of the day, someone from the team has been into every unit. So we talk about, the big highs and the big lows. Did we find this window is totally missing or cracked, or the tree fell down, or whatever it might be. So then we prioritize maintenance, CapEx spend, sort of that first week of like health and safety issues or emergencies or things that are going to grow into big problems. So we always sort of have some money set aside for that week one of like, oh, this is some kind of emergency we know we're going to have to take care of. So we knock that out. And then we assemble all that information in one big Google Doc. And so then I can easily count, how many low flow toilets do I have in this property? How many water leaks do I have? How many old kitchens do I have? How many units were renovated or in partial renovation, depending on the status. So that there's these data points that you'll set up ahead of time. And then now we've got a full comprehensive picture of the whole property. And that's just day one.
Right. That's just day one. Now, for the last 55 unit that I co-sponsored last year, we developed a great relationship with a property manager. And shortly before closing, that property manager accepted another job at another company, right? But we were fortunate to where there was good continuity in that company to where we can keep the same property management company, right? Because when on day one, it was absolutely important to us to start with a warm property management company who's familiar with the asset, who's familiar with the business plan, so they can get ready to execute day one. How important is a property manager to you on day one?
Well, the property manager is, I would think, the most important piece of any multifamily property. We went through a few months where we fired every property manager we had on every asset that was above 20 units because it was just a poor lineup of challenges that we had. And I talk about that on my show a little bit, but really the impetus is we found a amazing property manager in one of our markets, which showed us where we were lacking on our other property managers. And we're like, it shouldn't have to be this hard. A really professional, solid management company, they're expensive, but they are adding so much more value to your property. And so we were like blown away and literally said, we're not getting anywhere near the level of service on our other assets that we're getting here. We need to start doing interviews and make some changes. That process, though, we didn't rush because I think I interviewed 12. So in a market that we're in Lexington, Kentucky, I interviewed 12 management companies on the phone. 3 or 4 made it to me wanting to do in-persons. And then when we do that, we're touring their other properties. We're getting references and referrals. And what we're really looking for
that's some good advice right there.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We're looking for in-market experience with similar type assets as the number one indicator that they will be successful with your property. So if there's a management company that is really highly rated in Louisville, for example, but doesn't have any projects or maybe just one project in Lexington, I'm not interested in them in Lexington because even their processes are great and all that. I want to see that you have specific experience in that specific market that even though they're only an hour away, it's a different market, it's a different town, different contractors and all that. So we really narrowed it down to type of asset. So we have C-class assets. So I want a manager that has C-class experience in that town that has done the type of work that we're doing. So if our construction plan is to go in and renovate units, I want a manager that has renovated units before and can handle doing inspections and bringing in contractors and all of that stuff that goes into it. The best indicator for me is experience doing that already. I've spoken to a lot of great companies that are like, yeah, we want to, you're going to be our first one in that market. I'm like, sorry, I'm not willing to do that with you. Yeah, exactly. I'm not willing to do that with you because that's just the standards that we've set because we've been burned in the past, honestly. And so it's not something that I want to do. Now, you go and you get a whole bunch of experience in that market with other people and we might, I'm not shutting the door for the future, or maybe I want to maybe I'll find a property in the market that I'll absolutely call you. But in this market for this property, maybe it doesn't work. And so we have to be very, very hyper specific about criteria for our management companies because they are the ones that are looking after our assets. Even though it's my job and I'm responsible to the investors and the rest of the general partnership, the property management team is there every day. And they're the ones deciding, do we fix this? Do we not? Do we tell the ownership about it? Do we not? We're putting a lot of trust and faith in their experience and their staff. And that's not to say we don't check on them. We tend to go out to our properties every 6 to 8 weeks. I'm on site at our properties. And it's a bit of travel, but we want to keep an eye on everything that's going on because
that's right.
Seeing that the property manager can show you and tell you a story that they want you to know about the property. And they'll send you pictures and videos, but you're limited to where they decide to point that camera, right?
That's right.
Yeah, you're right. So I was in North Carolina, and a fellow syndicator asked me to check on a property that he owns there, and he lives all the way in the south. So he can't just up and drive there every day. So a couple of the assumptions that not assumption, but a couple of the things that the property manager should have fixed was not the case. To include sending in pictures saying this was repaired. So I looked at it, sending pictures and videos. Were like, I appreciate you for going there, Hutch. Yeah, so you always want to inspect what you expect. Always. Absolutely.
We actually have local investors that we partner with in every market that we're in. And so I found them through Bigger Pockets. Usually the folk, if I'm ever going to a property, I usually try to attend a local meetup or make a local meetup if the schedule doesn't work out. And we'll just say like, hey, we're multifamily investors. We have property in this town, or we want to have property in this town. Let's organize a meetup at this pizza place or bar or whatever, and we want to meet some local folks. So from that, we build relationships with local investors. Maybe they've seen Matt on Bigger Pockets or something, and they want to work with us. And so we have team members now in every market that go and inspect our properties for us. And I get a report every week. We usually do every other. So we have in Lexington 3 assets, and so basically every other week, this guy is walking our properties. And so I'm seeing the things that the manager doesn't, and it's not like they're intentionally hiding things, but there's a bunch of trash over by the dumpster, or this wire's hanging down, or the glass in the window's broken. And so it's just helpful for us to have someone that we can trust that's going to go take photos and videos and then just send it off to the management company. And then they know that someone can come by at any time
and check their work.
Exactly.
Oh, man. So when you were earlier talking about day one, you find all the stuff that you missed during due diligence. What was one of the biggest things you've uncovered, I guess, during that process, or what was one that stood out?
Oh man, let's see. Vacancy is usually something that you would think that you would probably have a handle on before you close a property. We, on one that we closed in Kentucky, had about 7 or 8 extra vacant units than what was on the rent roll. And then the last time we had checked.
That's
so
huge.
And again, you don't see that on the rent roll until the next month, right? So some point between the time we had reviewed the last rent roll and closing, call it maybe 10 days, depending on when we close, we had 8 people just up and leave. And so that impacted our revenue. The other one we had was in one of the units between due diligence and closing, a unit sort of sprung a leak, and the manager did not, or the owner did not really care to do too much about it. They stopped the leak, turned off the water, and just closed the door without doing the proper cleanup. So we go in for our due diligence thinking this unit, I don't know if, I can't remember honestly if they told us about the leak or not, but we went in there, not only found obviously that there had been a leak, but that this unit had been closed up for like maybe 2 weeks or more. And it was probably a month, I think. And so now we've got fun stuff growing up the walls, and this unit that we thought was almost rent ready, or maybe rent ready already, now needs us to go in and pull out sheetrock and do all this mitigation on it. And so that's
that's crazy. That's nuts.
It's just part of it, honestly. And so we sort of at this point count on some of that, and that's why we close with reserves, and we'll close with a line item in our budget of just like day one repairs and it's not allocated to anything in particular, but we know depending on the property size, we might need $10,000 to take care of things in the first week or two.
Oh man. So that brings up something else interesting. So what's one of the toughest things you have to do as an asset manager?
Oh, that's a great question. It's a people business, and you can have all the KPIs in the world, but at the end of the day, it's managing people and making sure that you have relationships with every person that is touching that property, and that we've picked the right management company, from the folks doing the maintenance through the VP sitting back in HQ. I strive and really push and been very deliberate about making relationships with every person along the way, local investors as well. Even that, like I said, the tenants before, it's a challenge or something that a lot of people overlook, is that being face-to-face, building those connections is something that's very easy to overlook. And we all say, oh yeah, we can manage this property from 6-8 hours away, but you have to be there. And being there, putting in the time, putting in the face-to-face connection is something that gets overlooked, but it's super, super critical.
Dang, boom, mic drop.
Yeah, appreciate it. But so before we get into the focus round, we all dealing with this COVID-19 stuff, right?
Yeah.
It's a serious issue, and we all know that even though we're providing a basic life necessity, right, apartment buildings, we definitely will feel some effect of that crazy black swan that's going around right now. So what are some of the offensive and defensive strategies that you are incorporating as an asset manager in the asset that you manage?
Great question. I mean, this is pretty much all we've talked about here in the last 2 weeks on our team and with our property managers. And each property manager that we have is trying something a little bit different, and we're okay with that because no one knows. We're sitting, I don't know when this is going to release, but we're sitting here about a week away from when April rent is going to first be due, and that's frankly making a lot of investors and me nervous. So one thing we're doing is over communicating. And so that's with our investors. Normally our investors get an update once a month. They've all gotten 3 already this month from me, and another one due to go out this afternoon, actually. So basically weekly now we've been updating our investors to let them know what we're doing, what our property management company is doing. In one market, we are offering pretty heavy rent discounts for people to pay on time. In another, we're offering payment plans. And we recognize a lot of you might be laid off. You still owe us the rent, but let's take 3 months to get there type thing. And so we're experimenting, and that's all anyone can do right now because we've never had a situation like we're staying calm. We're over communicating to our investors. We're communicating to our tenants. We're providing them all the resources that are available to them. The government just announced a stimulus package a day or two ago. Seems like it's going to get finalized today, hopefully. And that means checks to our tenants in the next 3 weeks or so. We hope. We don't know. Yes. We can give them the resources to go get that money, but we can't make them pay that money to us.
Hutch and I were talking about that earlier today, where it's like,
I got in a lot of trouble on Reddit the other day. I posted in a real estate forum, a guy was talking about all of his tenants had wrote a letter saying they weren't going to pay. And I said, the phrase I used was, we've seen some tenants want to take advantage of the situation. And then I gave him a bunch of helpful advice about what we were doing. And the amount of people that sent me like all these terrible like messages online about like, what a terrible person I was because I think that people are taking advantage. And the reality is, some people in any situation will take advantage. Not most, not all. Some will. Some tenants will probably go buy a new TV with that check. That's just reality. And they're not going to pay their landlord. And that's just reality. And I don't hope that happens. Listen, I hope everyone gets that check and pays it right to their landlord. I don't think it's going to happen. We're preparing for 25 to 50% drop in revenue next month. We don't know. It could be more. It could be less. We just don't know. This is the great experiment, as you said. And so all we can do is stay calm and react to what's immediately in front of us. As of right now, we've done everything we can to collect March rent. Delinquency and collections is a big thing the asset manager does. And so we're encouraging all of our property managers to collect as much of that March rent as possible. We do have a few tenants that are still outstanding, and we're trying to be creative with them and offer gift cards or other things that we can do to get them to get that March rent in, because April's coming and we just don't know what's going to happen there.
Really appreciate the information you passed. We're going to dive right into the focus round.
All right. So the focus round, it's an acronym. It's our sort of rapid fire round where we get to know you a lot better.
Love it.
So F is for fun. So what do you do for fun?
These days, I pretty much have time for my business and my kids, and I hang out with my kids. And so lately, with all the quarantine stuff going on, I am getting a lot of family time in. And so we're actually, as soon as I hang up with you guys, going on a family hike. We're going to go. I'm teaching my 3-year-old like the trail markers, and we saw a snake the other day on one of our hikes, so he's like really into it and really excited about it, and so that's fun. It just spending time with the family, and it's an opportunity that we have now to where I can't go see anyone else, I can't go do anything else, and so I'm just really enjoying the family bonding time, and that's kind of what I do for fun right now.
What is one opportunity that was a game changer for you, other than COVID-19? I guess COVID-19 could be a game changer too, right? But
I think and this could be a whole episode in itself, but getting laid off from my full-time job, and seeing that as an opportunity, and I have to credit my wife for really pushing me and saying, go into real estate. You've been talking about it for years. You've been saying you're going to do it. You've been saying you're going to quit. They made the decision for you. Have the stones to just go do it. And so that was the not only them letting me go, but my wife just pushing and saying, we support you. We're going to do what we can here at home. And that was game changer for me.
Nothing motivates a man more than his wife telling him he needs to get the stones to do whatever he said he was going to do.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Yes, I was listening to a not so familiar book. At least I just came across it. It talks about Outwitting the Devil by Napoleon Hill. It's like an interview with the devil. And that's one of the things that he talk about, is that having a mastermind between a husband and a wife. The devil is saying that each individual can be influenced to not fulfill their dream. But when a husband and a wife is on the same team and they're masterminding to get the family, to get success for the family, the devil cannot intervene, right? So it's amazing that when you have a team to go to life through. So, the real estate is a team sport, and so is actually life. Having a great wife,
absolutely,
great family, also building.
It's critical. It's absolutely critical.
Yeah.
Love it.
Man. So,
I love that.
For asset management, as with anything that you're doing, communication is a huge part of it. So you as an asset manager, what is your most important communication tip? Over
communicate. That's what it comes down to. And especially when things are not going well. I went through a period, I'll be honest, on my 40 unit where I wasn't getting the rents. We weren't filling it. We had evictions. Things were just sputtering. And my investors didn't hear from me for like 2 months. And I started getting texts like, hey, what's happening? And I was sort of ashamed and just, next week. What it really was a pure thought of next week will be better. So I'll send them an update next week. And that turns into 7, 8, 9 weeks without sending an update. Yeah. And so I learned from that, and a very supportive group of investors that work with me and believe in me, but just saying like, hey, even if it's bad news, we can probably help. And my investor base all comes from different diverse backgrounds and experience, and whether they're VP of sales for their company or doctors or whatever, like they all have a collective experience that I don't have. And so if I bring them along and let them know what's happening, chances are I'm going to get some ideas that I may not have thought of. And so over communicate, not only with your investors, but with property managers and everyone else. That's the tip, is just do it often, even more than you think you need to.
This real estate environment is a growing process, right? So what is one thing you wish you understood earlier?
I think it goes back to the difference between the plan and the actual, and understanding, because when I underwrote my deal, I was all rosy and optimistic, and I had heard the podcast and read the books and how to plan, and yeah, we're going to turn over all these units and we're going to renovate and come in at the higher rates. And so I wish I knew more. And really, it's experience, right? It's experience understanding how these turnarounds go, and knowing that we've got to stretch these timelines out and be a little more realistic and conservative. Even when you think you're being conservative, chances are you're probably not being conservative enough. And so that's been a hard lesson to learn, but super important.
Oh man, so that's good. That actually leads us right into the next. So S is for success. To what do you attribute your success?
That's a great question, and goes back to actually what Hutch said at the top of the show. Like, it's hard to like look back at yourself and say you did that. That bio is yours. But I think that it's persistence and understanding that, especially with syndication, these things are bigger than me. Like this deal, any deal I'm in, I'm not working for me or for my wealth. That's a part of it, but I have investors that putting their retirement funds into our projects that are taking money. They're saying, I'm taking money out of the stock market. I believe in you more than the American economy, right? Is what they're saying. They're saying, I believe in you and your deal.
Right.
And so that is a huge, huge responsibility and a weight that I feel. And referencing that just keeps me persistent. And so in any challenges that we have, it's just, all right, let's figure out how to come up with a solution, how to turn the situation around. And there's always challenges every day. Every time I talk to my managers, there's some kind of new challenge, and so it just comes back to what is the bigger purpose and how do we push through it. And a lot of times I lean on my investors and think about where they're coming from and their belief in me, and that propels me forward.
Yeah, we really appreciate you joining on this show. How can our listeners get in touch with you?
Best way is through the podcast. So find me, truemultifamily.show is our website. All of our episodes are up there with bios of all of our guests. And then find me Instagram, True Multifamily, and all my contact information is there. And I'd love to chat with you guys. And thanks for having me. This has been a really fun show.
Excellent. Well, thanks for sharing with us everything about asset management. The key takeaway points were: include your asset management strategy in your underwriting, be more realistic, try to be more conservative than you think you should be. Dealing with the people is going to be tough, and so you want to make sure you have connections along the way. You're building those relationships along the way, and then over-communicate to your investors, your property management group, your tenants during times where things are uncertain. So a lot of golden nuggets throughout this episode, and we appreciate you and your time for coming on and sharing all this with us today. It's just great. So
love it, guys. Right. Thanks for having me.
Thanks to all our listeners. We would like to mention that if you take the time to rate and review the show, it really helps us to get the content out there. So we appreciate any help in that regard. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next week. I'm Dr. Heath Jones.
And I'm Hutch, the Marine Investor. Please stay safe.